Okay, we're going to start the December 9th Transportation Advisory Board meeting for the City of Longmont. And we'll start with a roll call, please.
Chair Lehner.
Here.
Board Member Bennett.
Present.
Board Member Wicklund.
Here.
Vice Chair McKay Burrows.
Here.
Board Member McInerney.
Here.
Board Member Kalkoffer.
Here.
Great. We need to move to approving the minutes of the preceding meeting from October, since we did not have a meeting in November. Are there any comments or corrections to the minutes from the October meeting?
We also have to approve September. Didn't have a quorum enough.
That's right, we didn't have a quorum. Good point. So let's move back to September 1st and approve the minutes of that. Do we have any questions or comments on, or corrections on the minutes from the September meeting? No? Okay. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes of the September meeting?
I motion to approve the September meeting from 2024.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we will move now to the October 2024 minutes. Any corrections and/or questions and comments to that? No? Get a motion to, already jumped to it.
Motion to approve the October 21st, 2024 minutes.
I'll second that.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that passes. So let's go ahead and move on to communications from staff. Phil?
Good evening, Phil Greenwald, Transportation Planning Manager with the City of Longmont. Just wanted to give you some quick updates from staff. One of the big ones today is our kickoff day for the microtransit. So ride Longmont, folks, if you can. It was really easy. Got to be the first one on the bus today, on the minivan. So it was pretty exciting for me, but others probably not so excited about a minivan. But it's a great way to get around town. It's really easy. I'll be honest with you. It's really it's very painless. I'll say that. I'm trying to look up how many trips we've had so far today, and I see that we had a couple dozen. So it wasn't very many to start, but the word's getting out there, and I think with the news story, and I'll just go ahead and show that to you really quick. Just want to give you some heads up on kind of what we're seeing out there. And of course, we're not going to get any sound now.
With transportation, it's called Ride Longmont. The city just launched it today. 9 News' Northern Colorado reporter Amanda Gilbert learned how it works and who's going to help the most.
We all have our own opinions about traffic, right? Well, people who live in the area tell me that traffic does sometimes pick up, especially on Main Street, as more people move here. It's no surprise, Riley Parker sometimes uses a skateboard to get to work. He doesn't have a car.
I mostly use the bus to get to work and back, or ride my skateboard when the weather's nice.
He doesn't mind it, except during rush hour.
During rush hour, like, Main Street's just stopped.
Council members say people in town reached out to them about the growing population.
They tell us there isn't enough opportunity for them to get from one side of the city to the other side of the city.
So they're launching Ride Longmont. The 6-passenger vans and local drivers will get a few people around town at once.
We want to be more of a pedestrian city.
Mayor Joan Peck says this pilot program's goal is to make local transit more affordable.
$2 a ride, and the first month is going to be free.
We're providing these opportunities for people that may not have the money for Uber to take them all the way east Longmont.
Parker agrees.
I know that Uber and like Lyft get so expensive now.
He said he hadn't heard of the app just yet, but he'd consider downloading it and requesting a meetup location. Ride focused on Longmont specifically, but it does get people to the mobility center if they'd like to get on a bus or connect to other towns. In Longmont, Amanda Gilbert, 9 News.
So very exciting today. Again, we've got kind of low ridership, but people are just discovering it. We've had 172 downloads of the app. So the company was very impressed with that. I told them to watch out for more from Longmont because I know we're going to bring a lot of more folks to the service than there are other cities that they've tried this in. So they told us there's about 500 other cities around the world that they work with. So we're in good company, I suppose. But it was a very successful launch. There are bugs to work out, obviously, and those things will move along as we go through them and find them. So try it out. Download the app. It's on all the app stores at Ride Longmont. So the service runs from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. most days, except for Sunday 9 to 5. And so give us feedback. We want to hear back from this group and the public on how they feel about this service and where it can see improvements. So anything would be great to hear back. I know the first issue is going to be no cargo bikes on the back probably, but we're working on how to accommodate most folks. And there is ADA accessibility, so there are 2 vans that have ADA wheelchair access. And the other 4 vans, so we have 6 vans total, 4 of them have the bike rack in the back. So if you do want to take your bike, smaller bike around town, you can do that. It's only within the city limits. It's only within the planning area, which just goes just beyond the city limits. And then we also have contracted a small extension out to the new mobility hub at I-25 and 119, and that's what they were mentioning on the newscast. The new mobility hub opened in October. They've got free bus service running out there to Denver, 30-minute trip to Denver from there, and then up to Fort Collins as well. So lots of opportunities now to kind of hook into the different transit pieces here. And this is just, I think people are confused right now with what this service is. And so we just need to do a better job maybe of explaining, this isn't meant to be the taxi service. A lot of people were like, so I'm going to go to this place, and if you could just wait for me then, and I'll just get back in and then I'll go home because I just need to drop something off. And it's, well, you need to make you need to make a trip request to the place you're going to, and then you need to make a trip request back. This isn't like a private van service or taxi. It's not a taxi service. It's a shared ride transit service. It's public transit. So we need to get the message out on how this works so people aren't disappointed when it's not doing what they thought it should do. But otherwise, we're doing pretty well, I think, with that. And so thanks for indulging me with the video too. It's great to have the council members show up this morning early, cold. And so really appreciate your time doing that. And sorry they didn't take all the information. There was some great quotes that got left off that, but Councilmember Yarbrough can give those to you during her segment later. Thank you. And I'll turn it over to Jim for some updates on 287.
Chair Lehner, TAB board members, wanted to just give you an update on a CDOT project on 287. Recently, CDOT was awarded an infra grant, INFRA, infrastructure grant, for safety improvements on 287 north and south of the city, primarily for the installation of a center barrier. That project, they are starting their kind of coordination effort with local communities and their design. The current schedule calls for the project to go to advertisement in November of 2025. So that project is, I think we've heard about it on the news, is underway. There's been some significant upticks in accidents in those areas, some fatals. So CDOT is stepping up with, they started with the grant. So we'll see that move forward. We'll give you updates periodically as we get more news on it. And tonight, one of the presentations you're going to be seeing is our effort around 21st and Main. Tomorrow morning, we'll be meeting with CDOT. They've got some dollars for improvements to some of the other intersections on Main Street. So we'll be meeting with them primarily, I think, 23rd, Mountain View, 9th Avenue, and 17th. So we'll be looking at those as well, but that would be driven by CDOT as it is their corridor. So just an update on some of the improvements that are going on on Main Street. And thank you.
And now Kyle has some information as well.
Yeah, so in October, we had some staff members, including myself, attend the Safe, let's get the name right, Safe Routes to School National Conference in Fort Collins. So it was a big conglomerate of different cities, municipalities, and different advocacy groups talking about how to get to schools and other facilities safely through biking, rolling, or other transportation methods. Some great seminars about multimodal transportation, equity in transportation, as well as biking throughout Fort Collins to see their trail system. The Spring Creek Trail Systems ended up being like a 12-mile bike ride. We stopped by some school routes as well as some improvised off concrete routes. So through city-built dirt paths that were made by advocacy groups, as well as some interactions with middle school students. So it was a great learning experience. So looking to take that information that we've kind of learned and apply some more to our Vision Zero plans.
That's all from staff.
Thank you, Phil, and staff. Okay, we can move to public comments. We have David Vilan, I may not get that right, or Vilan? Vayon.
Do I come up here?
Yep.
Forgive me, I've never done this before.
Yep.
Just your name and address.
Yeah, just your name and address, and then provide your comments. And we give you 3 minutes. You can go a little bit over. I'm not going to turn on the timer.
Yeah, so David Vayon, and it's 1523 Kempton Court. We're in South Longmont there. So really, my interest is to kind of raise awareness of an intersection and then maybe get advice on how to move forward. I met a few of you gentlemen at the Vision Zero kickoff meeting. So we wanted to kind of attend to just make sure we're highlighting this. And it's a good time hearing the safe routes to schools because it is exactly related to that. So yeah, we live in South Broadmoor, and the intersection of South Sunset and Left Hand Drive on one side and Left Hand Circle on the other side. So we walk to school, and my daughter goes to Flagstaff, which is a block and a half into that business park on Left Hand Circle. So we have quite a few students in our neighborhood, for starters, that would like to walk, but their parents are too scared. We've almost been run over numerous times trying to walk through that intersection. We've mentioned it to numerous people. Everybody, corroborates that it's a totally nightmare intersection. So our goal is to try to at least get a crosswalk there. And, we've only lived in Longmont for a year and a half, and we really like the community. We want to make it our home long term, and honestly, with our 8-year-old daughter in attendance as well, we plan to, increase safety during that residency, if you will. So yeah, again, part of this is a question of how do we try to move forward to highlight that, to get an intersection there. I think we've already brought it up to some of your attention in the past, but we just want to, show that we're here, and whatever we can do to help make that happen, we want to do. I don't know if petitions would be relevant. People have said, hey, let's do one. I don't need to waste people's time unless you think it would help. So yeah, that's in a nutshell where we're coming from. I don't know if this is relevant, especially not at this point, but our hope is a lit crosswalk like they have on Main Street. And we're even happy to raise community funds to do it. So we're basically, if funding is an issue, we'll try to raise the money and pay for it. So we definitely want to do whatever we can to make that happen.
Great, thank you. Obviously, yeah, we can't provide any solution for tonight's meeting. However, I did want to ask Jim or Phil in regards to crosswalk and or a lit ped crossing, what would be the procedure and or what would I say, bare minimum for that to even be considered?
Yeah, so that intersection is actually one we've been looking at through Vision Zero, kind of a preemptive project before we get our action plan out. We've actually already taken some counts at that intersection, and we'll be paving left-hand circle this summer through our pavement management program, as well as providing some crossing improvements at left-hand circle and Miller Drive, and then extending that work over to that Sunset and left-hand circle intersection as well. We're still kind of in the design phase, so I can't divulge exact information, but it is an intersection we're looking at for improvements for crossing the road.
And the fact that a school is fairly nearby, and I know it's not probably within the distance parameter of what's set up for particular school crossings, are you able to look at that and I guess with their concerns with the children, kind of maybe come up with what you think is a good remedy for the situation?
Yeah, and that's kind of the whole, I guess, philosophy of our upcoming Vision Zero plan is how can we expedite these plans to be more beneficial to community. Previously, we've been following METCD guidelines, which do have higher stringent values on how many pedestrians per hour. In a lot of places, that's hard to reach. We're trying to make that more intuitive of when we have crossings, where we have crossings, and that area, especially connecting the neighborhoods into Flagstaff Academy, which is a charter school, and as well as Front Range Community College. So as we're looking for Vision Zero is what's that criteria, what's that limit, and with the school being there, technically two schools, especially Front Range, gives people who may not have as high as economic privilege to drive and are just trying to get a better education. How can we get them to those locations safer? So that's the location we're definitely looking at for improvements this summer as part of kind of a pilot part of Vision Zero.
Thank you, Chair. So ironic that you came here tonight because I live in that area and I walk my dog over there. And I was thinking, going through my head, the same thing, would a crosswalk right there be beneficial because you have the decline of that hill and you can't see cars coming down. So if you have a crosswalk, I don't know how would you prevent still accidents right there, because when they come down that hill, they're coming sometimes, really fast. And I know for myself, I cross over by the middle school, Sunset Middle School, because there's a crosswalk right there. But it's just so crazy. I was really thinking all of these things myself. Should we have the light right there? But then you have Pike right there. That's not that far. We should, it's just something, if we put a sign, the lights right there, we would definitely have to put a warning at the top of the hill that there is a crosswalk so people can start slowing down. That definitely has to be a must because of, I stand there a long time before I run across the street with my dog because I am on that east side of the street. And I walk through that industrial area all the time and walk through Flagstaff because it's less traffic within that industrial area. So I definitely agree with the concerns of that area and kids walking to school. That is such a dangerous area to walk across. And I wouldn't let my 8-year-old child walk across that street by themselves on Sunset. But meanwhile, until you all come up with a plan, is there some type of wayfinding or signs you can have to where the crosswalk is across, up the hill? And maybe we can have a flasher right there, although that's kind of far out of the way of going to the school. But until you all come up with a plan of what you're going to do, that can be an option of having something right there at that crosswalk that from Sunset Middle School, because that's what I do, because it's scary to cross at the bottom of the hill, so.
Driver feedback unit, can you put a temporary one on that, on the start of the rise?
I mean, that's what we can discuss. I say part of the, at least at the left-hand circle intersection, we have some issues with the ADA ramps a little bit as they kind of guide people into the roadway. So when we're looking at our 2025 PMP, looking at those directional ramps, and as you know before, the issue with the hill coming down, it's very hard to see. I've stood on that corner just to get a feel for it. So we'll be looking at some feedback signs as well as advanced warnings. And the idea was to bring this more fleshed out version and an idea at the 25 PMP in February, I believe it's scheduled for, along with all the other smaller improvements we're doing as part of our pavement management program. But as Vision Zero as a whole, as we're kind of working through this plan, it's a great example of we have several schools with smaller children, and we are having them cross a minor arterial of the city. And so how can we improve that crossing, that safety, decrease the speeds, and increase awareness of when children are crossing the road so they actually do feel safe? So that's a whole different change of our mindset of when we do improvements and why we're doing them. If you notice, if you've walked through Miller Drive recently, we did stripe it this summer with reduced lanes, parking lanes, as well as a door opening buffer zone area. So it's definitely reduced the road down a lot, and I'm installing some school flashers, hopefully when they get delivered this month over winter break. Yep, thank you.
So I know the exact intersection you're talking about because I myself also cross that every single week. I take my kids to Apex every week. So we cross over from left hand over because we go along at left hand around the circle because it's a lot safer by bike than going up Sunset. So we kind of go the long way around. So I know exactly what you're talking about because even by bike, it's tight. Like you got to kind of hope that there's not kind of a car coming down the hill towards you because even by bike, it's really, if there was a car coming down the hill, then you would be kind of in a little trouble even on a bike because you're still moving slower than a car is. So I don't know if maybe one of the things you could look at is increasing the school zone so that the speeds are lower, so be like 20 miles an hour instead of it being, the normal speed. I don't know what the speed is, but it seems really high. 35. Okay. Yeah, so maybe something like that, and that would help at least reduce the speed of everyone through that area because I see people crossing that intersection all the time, and I do it myself. So it would be really nice if it was safer and a little less daunting because it's the safest way for us to get there, but it's still not that great. So, yeah, thanks.
So just to summarize, we are looking at it now, anticipating that any action we will take will be before the next school season. But in the meantime, we'll look at some other options to slow people down in that area, whether that's, expanding the school zone as Board Member McKee Barrows had recommended. And then we'll look at if there's any other signing we can do in the short term. But we anticipate that before the next school season, starting in August of next year, we'll have those improvements completed, not just laid out in a plan.
And thank you for those comments and the discussion. I hopefully is going to provide you with some intermediate as well as hopefully a long-term solution.
Yeah, and just to recap, we have taken video counts at that area with some new technology we've been using for pedestrian and bicycle and vehicle counts over multiple days. So happy to share information, and then the best way to going forward to interact with city staff members is through that Vision Zero task force, which thank you for attending that one. I think we have one more on Monday the 18th, 16th, sorry. And then hopefully, as we work through this action plan, we'll have more tools for residents to engage city staff and place more areas of need on comments on a map. So looking forward to that information as well.
I was just thinking, that's why I asked if there's a minimum distance for Ride Longmont. So just across the intersection. Could we get a crossing guard there too, right? But I know that the schools organize that. Okay, we've got the public heard. I don't think there's anybody else here, so we will move on to our information items. And it looks like 21st and Main conceptual design update would be the first thing on the list.
Run away.
Phil suggested we both sit here.
It's easier, I think. Yeah, sorry. I'm just sitting there like you're doing.
There we go. Thank you. Good evening. My name is Erin Provo. I'm a senior civil engineer in the Public Works Department. I'm here tonight with Chris Vogelsang from OV Consulting. And tonight we'd like to talk to you about our active project of 21st and Main intersection improvements. So first, I'm going to give you just a quick kind of background overview on the project. I'll give you sort of a quick summary of the public engagement we've done to date, and then I'll hand it over to Chris to go into more of the deep dive on the alternatives, with the hope being that tonight we'll give you a high-level explanation on the alternatives that you've hopefully had the chance to look at already, and then provide opportunity to have conversation, answer questions, and get your input on the alternatives that we've put together so far. Chris Vogelsang is one of our consultant leads on the concept design. This location was identified in the Main Street Corridor Plan that was adopted in October of 2019. And we have been working on the study phase and then the design phase, which will be both funded by a Dr. Cog grant. So we're going to be in concept design from now until March of 2025. And then the final design will follow and will be done through the remaining of 2025, and with the hope being that we'll begin construction in 2027, which we'll have to pursue funding for construction. We don't have that identified at this time, partially because it depends largely on what the recommended alternative comes out of the study phase. So we've engaged in a pretty robust public engagement process. One piece of which has been a survey that we received nearly 700 responses on. And in looking at the responses and kind of compiling a lot of the information, some of the highlights of the main concerns that the public have had has been that you don't see pedestrians and bicyclists from turning cars, especially. There's too much speeding on both streets. 21st and 287 both see excessive speeds, as well as there's long wait times at the traffic lights due to a lack of protected left turns. And so the lack of opportunity to make safe left turns also kind of ties into the not being able to see pedestrians and bicyclists when they're trying to shoot gaps that aren't really suitable for those turning movements. So Chris is going to take over and sort of give you the high-level overview of the alternatives.
Awesome. Thanks. Chris Vogelsang with OV Consulting again. Glad to be here. I see a couple familiar faces. We had the pleasure of talking with the Bicycle Issues Committee last Monday, and so Gina and Taylor were both there. Thank you. So I'm going to go through a couple things. First, I want to talk about some operational improvements. So there's a lot of things we could do here. Some are related to changing the intersection configuration. Some are changing how it works or how the signals work or different things like that. And I thought we'd start with the operational ones because they apply to all of them. So here's a list of ones you come up with, and a lot of these tie in back to your Vision Zero toolkit as well. And they were also identified in some previous studies. CDOT did an intersection prioritization study here recently that identified some. So things like enforcement cameras, so for red light or speed or both. Protected only left turns. Right now, if you were out there, you'd see there's protected permissive or permissive only, permissive being just like the green ball. That leads to some pedestrian conflicts and some accident issues out there. Lead pedestrian intervals already implemented. That's where the white man, the walk, comes up before the green light, so the pedestrian can occupy the crosswalk. There's some things with clearance intervals. Clearance intervals is a time between phases, right? So phase is like, so it goes from green to yellow to red. And if the red is too short, then other cars kind of enter and you can have accident issues. Some issues there. No right turn on red, making the signals more visible. And then some of the more aspirational things, I think, like passive pedestrian detection is something that we've been looking at in the traffic engineering community. There's some good systems out there, but the reliability is sort of being tuned. They work really well in some locations and not in others. And then transit. So we know that there's a transit route along 287. There's some plans with that with the BRT, right? And so should we be accommodating queue jump, transit signal priority operations? Should we be bringing the bus stops closer to the intersection or accommodating them where they are? So those are some of the operational improvements we've been looking at, and those could apply to any of the things we'll talk about. And then in terms of the geometric improvements, like how you change how the intersection looks, and where the curb lines are and things. We talked through a lot of different ideas, and we kind of settled on 3 families, I kind of call them. And so one would be just focused improvements. So we have some spot problems that we would produce focused solutions to, right? So maybe with a turn that we're having trouble with or things like that. And then a compact intersection, that's taking the intersection and changing it so that we either reduce the crossing distance, or we add raised medians, or we create special space for peds bikes and really try to get the space down so that speeds go down, especially turning speeds, which is one of our primary conflict points. And then a roundabout, which was one of the Vision Zero strategies in terms of vehicle-to-vehicle collisions, very effective at reducing severity and fatalities. Sort of less proven in terms of pedestrian bicycle accommodation, what you'd need to do to make that work. I did want to point out, as I go through these, especially for Taylor and Gina, we went through these last week. We've made some adjustments based on comment we got last week that I'll point out as we go through the alternatives. Okay, so those are the families. And then I thought we'd just dive in because I know you all know where the intersection is and you kind of know the issues. We'll go through and we can come back and forth. We can talk however you want, but I thought I'd start with focused and move my way up to roundabout. So focused improvements are all about sort of maximum return on minimum investment, right? So we're trying to get big ROI, and the changes you'd see here in this from today involve getting the bike lanes across the intersection in a way that the enhanced multi-use corridor plan kind of identified, and the new TMP as well pulls those up. So you'll see those come across on the east side of the intersection on the right, right? So north is up in this figure. We've taken space with striping. So we've created stripe medians, we've created stripe protected bike lanes, and conflict markings and those sort of things. So the curbs, the curb faces remain the same. On the west side, what we've done is we've changed the southbound right turn. So as you come down 287 and turn right to head west on 21st, right now that's kind of a concentric circle that allows for higher speed, and it leads to its own lane. So they don't have to yield to anybody. So there's a lot of sort of issues there. So what we've done here is change that so that we have a raised table crossing. We're coming in, we have a yield point, and we've changed the west side of 21st through a road diet as shown in the EMUC to just have one lane westbound and one lane eastbound, except for at the intersection, right? So that change is pretty significant. We think that's a good safety improvement. And then on the eastbound side, so if you're going at 21st east towards Main, that is a real, I don't know if it's a mess, but it's really complicated for drivers. There's a lot of curvature there. There's a free right turn. There's a lot of things to look out for as a driver and a pedestrian that makes it complicated. What we've tried to do here is simplify it and just we get rid of that free right, bring the curbs up, and just make that a through right lane instead of right to try to reduce that conflict. The other things we show here, and I'll show the differences as we go through. So we've also shown the lane widths on 287. So in this one, they stay exactly the same as they are today. So we haven't done any changes, and we've just been focused. Other thing common, I'll only point out in this one, and then we can talk more, is on the east side, you'll see that kind of cyan sidewalk line that comes down. So what we've shown is extending the Oligarchy Ditch Trail through basically it's an at-grade crossing. It's the same in all of these. That comes down, goes across the ditch, and continues over to Lanyon. I always say Layton. Lanyon Park, right? So that's the idea, and that's part of the long-term plan. So we can talk more about that too. Okay, so that's the least cost one. And then I get into the family of 3 ideas here about how to make the intersection smaller, really make an impact on speed and turning speed specifically. And so these all have slight differences, and I'll point those out. But in this one, what we've done is taken all 4 corners, gotten rid of all the free rights, really tighten up the radii, try to reduce the turning speed, and really kind of narrow that up, right? And we've carried the bike lanes across the same as in the last one. We've reduced the lane widths on 287 to what we consider a reasonable minimum. There's some opportunity maybe to go a little narrower. We'd kind of have to work that out with traffic, but what we've included here is basically 11-foot lanes for all the lanes with 2-foot gutter pans, right? And we could go down to 10 for like turn lanes. We just got to work it out. But there were some issues, accident issues we want to be cognizant of here. And then the other thing we did here is we took the curb lines and we brought them in. Okay, so we've narrowed the width of both Main and 287 to what we consider to be a reasonable minimum. So that involves reconstructing the curbs, reconstructing the drainage systems, the storm sewers, and all that stuff. And we're trying to get that crossing distance and the exposure time as low as possible. Okay, and so that's what this does. The next one I'm going to show you, and we can always come back and forth, very similar, but we took the space from the middle instead of the edges. So we've added raised medians in this, and the curb lines are further out, right? So for instance, on that east leg, that's a 10-foot wide raised median, I believe. And so the curb lines are 10 feet farther apart. So the trade-off is the total crossing distance is longer, but the raised median provides that sense of comfort for pedestrians and safety. They feel like there's a space. It also has a significant impact on turning speeds. So one of the things that Taylor and I were talking about is if people are in a hurry in this one and they sort of cut that left turn, they're able to kind of have a larger effective radius and have a higher turning speed. With this option, you can't really do that, right? You're forced into the radius we want you to, especially for those lefts. And so that's kind of a plus there, we think. So that's a trade-off between those two. And then the third one is like compact intersection to the maximum, I'd kind of call it, right? So this is what we call protected intersection. You all probably have seen these through different Vision Zero toolkits or some presentations. The idea is to really compact the intersection as much as possible, to create separate space for pedestrians and bicycles and clear paths through the intersection. You also notice the difference between, I'll say, this one and this one is that the bike lane that leaves the roadway and goes up behind the curb, right? So what we're doing is we're controlling the right-of-way. We're controlling right-of-way assignment at the intersection to try to make it so everybody has a clear space and we know where they're going to be and really reduce those right hook crashes. The other interesting thing about this is, so you'll notice that the crosswalk, so the pedestrian crosswalk is the black lines and the bike, so conflict markings are the green. They're set back from the flow line of the cross street, right? So that's a nuance. And that does something for you where you create clearer sight lines to the pedestrians from the turning vehicles. So the idea is like a right turn. They would turn, and now they have a more perpendicular look to what's going on and are able to yield if someone's in the crosswalk, as compared to being a little tighter, right? So the bike here, if somebody, say there's a bike coming from behind, the light turns green and you turn right, you could have a right hook accident, and we got to think about how that works. So this sort of mitigates that by space. Okay, and the last thing, so one thing I wanted to point out from your packet to this one is that the one in your packet shows a couple different options for how the protected bike lane goes across 287. In this one, what we've said is, hey, let's just treat it consistently. We can always kind of pick and choose later, but this is consistent where we're bringing the bikes up behind the curb and bring them up to sidewalk level. Okay, now this is the roundabout. This is the one we made the most changes from what you saw last week and what's in your packet, and there's a couple reasons. So our first look at the roundabout was really about space. Roundabouts tend to take more space than signalized intersections, and so we wanted to see how it would fit within the right-of-way and with the kind of available space we had. And so that's what we had to present last week, and that's what was ready at the time we sent your packets. In the meantime, what we've done is fine-tune that design, really brought it up to the level we feel like, especially like you'll see there's some similarities between the protected intersection and it, about how we define the paths, how that would work, and really show how PEDS bikes would navigate this. The other thing we've done is we've reduced the radius of the circle. So the one in your packet showed a 25-mile-an-hour design speed. We've tried to bring that down. It's about 20 in this. And so try to make it as small as possible so we can show that what its real impacts would be the right of way. And then the big change is that sort of outside circles outside the roundabout, which are the pedestrian and bicycle paths. So this is styled on, this is more in the protected intersection sort of vein of roundabout design. It's styled on what's called the Dutch style roundabout, and there's a picture in the bottom right that's one that was installed in Dublin a couple years ago. There aren't any of these in the U.S. that I could find examples of or pictures, but I know we've all been talking about them in my traffic engineering circles about how this would work. They tend to take quite a bit of space. They have a little out of direction travel for pedestrians and bikes, but there's very clear crossing points and control points. So safety is up, probably inconvenience of out of direction travel is up as well. A couple of things I wanted to point out about the roundabout in general is, so we're in what's called a coordinated signal system on 287. So we have signalized intersections both to the north and to the south. So usually those work in a way where we try to get what's called platoons. We get the cars to kind of go and hit the green wave, right? Save fuel, save time, make it all the way through as much as possible. The roundabout doesn't operate that way. It just operates as cars come, as cars arrive, right? So there are some operational concerns with platoons of cars entering and kind of locking up the roundabout or dominating it. So that's something we'd want to look at more closely if this were carried forward. The other is related to capacity and how it would operate. So if you can probably imagine 287 is busier than 21st. It's about 3 times as much traffic on during a peak hour, and not as many turns as throughs, right? So if you can imagine turns, like especially left turns, are ones that break up traffic in the circulatory roadway and create gaps for other people to enter. When we have legs that are kind of dominant that way, the operations of the roundabout gets a little unpredictable, right? So it's hard to say exactly how would it be when you showed up. Especially during the peak hours, I think the benefit of the roundabout is it's there all the time. It's there at 2 a.m. First, it has a geometric impact on speed. So you can't go around it any faster than it's designed, right? Doesn't matter if there's traffic or not. One of the minuses is it's sort of a fixed solution. So once you build it, it's there. And if traffic patterns change or whatever, it's hard to adapt and adjust. In the signal system, you can always make changes to timing or phasing, or like in this case, maybe we had left turn phases, those kind of things. So I think there's some really good things about the roundabout in terms of vehicular safety especially. I don't think we've had a vehicular fatality in Colorado ever in a roundabout, so they're very safe for cars, low energy collisions. But they require some special consideration for where you are, what your traffic's like, how they might operate, and pedestrians, bicycles specifically. One of my concerns is that our project is really focused on vulnerable population safety, vulnerable road user safety. And this might not be the most targeted at meeting that goal. Okay. So, did I miss anything, Aaron? Okay, so I've probably talked enough. I appreciate your patience as I run through these, and I'm happy to go back and forth, answer questions, have discussion. I'll cede the rest of my time.
I think probably the best way to proceed is maybe from the board, each one, you probably all have questions, and we'll just collectively go down the line. I think it's the easiest way to do this.
Yes, thank you for your time. So I, from a multimodal perspective, I mean, option 2C seems like such a wonderful design for safety of bicyclists and pedestrians. My concern is that 21st Avenue is currently doesn't have bike lanes, and so this creates an assumption that bike lanes are going to be installed on 21st, extending through ideally Hover and further along toward the eastern corridors. And so has there been any, is there any intention from the City of Longmont to do that, or because this is really just the confine, like you're as a consultant, like you're only focused on this intersection, correct?
Yeah, I'd say we've reviewed all of Longmont's transportation planning documents, and we've included items from that. And the bike lanes are specifically in, I think, two planning documents that are pretty recent. And so, yes, so we've included things that Longmont has told us through their planning process are things they want. And other than that, we're focused on the intersection. Oh, go ahead, Phil.
One more item is just that in our enhanced multi-use corridor plan, we do show the buffered bike lanes west of Main Street to Hover. That was part of a project that we were hoping to do with a chip seal, where we overlay with that fine chip that goes onto basically tar. And so at that point, we need to restripe it. So we were talking about how we would restripe it with the new enhanced multi-use corridor plan. So the buffered bike lanes, and then remove one of the lanes in each direction for vehicular travel.
All right, that's good to know. And yeah, I mean, overall, I love the idea. I'm somewhere in between, recognizing that I am hesitant towards encouraging bicyclists onto 21st, just because it has so much more traffic than 23rd or 19th Street that already have bike lanes. And so I think it's also important to consider it might be better to make this more of a car dominant street and yield resources to try to direct bicyclists onto already established safer bike paths. I bike down 23rd almost daily, and seeing myself transition to 21st just seems unlikely given the sheer traffic increase. But that is but very fascinating designs, and I appreciate your insight. Thank you.
Hello again. So, it was the same presentation as a week ago, mostly. The roundabout changed. I think if we could go to the roundabout, because I just have some yield questions, is what would be the rules of a driver if a ped is waiting to cross?
Yeah, so great question. So because this roundabout is a double lane, so it's got two circulatory lanes and all the approaches have two entry lanes, and we did look at that, and from an operations perspective, we kind of settled on we needed the two. That requires, if you can see in the top left, there's that pedestrian hybrid beacon. So that requires a signalization basically to assign right of way to allow the pedestrians across. So the way it would work is if you were a pedestrian, you came to the crosswalk, you would push a button, then the light would go through its phases, right, and become solid red. That would then give you the right of way to cross. Vehicles would be required to stop both exiting and entering. Right, and that's why those crosswalks are set back kind of far too, So that's both yielding distance related to site distance, but also storage distance. It's about 50 feet we've shown there. That's about 2 cars. So it gives cars a chance to yield and not be in the circulatory roadway. And then that would clear, and then they'd be across the intersection. So that's how that would work. It would have to be aided.
Okay.
Yep.
Would it have to be aided on 21st as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, I should say that, take that back. So on the entry legs on 21st, so there's a lot of nuance about like single versus double and what counts as, but the idea here is that we think that there's probably some sort of active device to reinforce right away or assign right away to cross the legs.
Okay. Like I do like this design better than what was a week ago, but I'll have to go back to kind of 2C.
Yeah, sure.
And I already mentioned it before the meeting, but adding, if there's space to add those like refuge islands just to really sharpen that turn of a vehicle, as we saw, was it this year, of the yellow Jeep that hit a pedestrian going pretty high speed turning. So try to limit, if we can slow down a vehicle while they're turning, is what I would like to see as well.
Yeah, great. The board member Wickland's saying this is nice, but we'd like, maybe we can incorporate this idea too. And so we haven't gotten to that sort of melded idea yet, but that's a good idea. Thank you.
Yeah. And in my personal opinion, I think 21st will be a great bikeway, especially going west for the neighborhoods. Also, if we can promote more walking and bike traffic, then, you know, we have less use of our roadway. So that's, I think, priority number 1, to save lives, save money. So, but that's all I have right now. So, thank you.
I already talked a lot last week, so I really like your updated roundabout, as I know that's probably no surprise. I like that it's Dutch style and it would be innovative for North America. And I have actually experienced this type of roundabout myself. I spent some time this weekend kind of doing some Google Maps of roundabouts I had lived with all my life to try to remind myself of what they're like. And I went to university in Sheffield, and there's a roundabout right next to the university that is very similar to what you have here, where it has crossings that are set back from the roundabout. It's a really busy roundabout. There's hundreds of cars going through that all the time, and there's crossings set back just like you have on this. The paths and the bikeways are a little closer to the road, so it's not like a circle, it's more like a kind of follows the inside track a little more, so it doesn't take as much space because there's lots of buildings on the corners. But this reminds me a lot of that of what I experienced for 4 years when I was going to university there, and I crossed it every day, and it was really nice being able to press a button, and it did stop all the cars, and it really didn't back up the roundabout that much because it was set back from where the roundabout circle is, so that when you press a button, even though it was super busy intersection, the cars didn't really back up into the roundabout that much, even during a really busy time. So just remind, if you ever want to look it up, that's a roundabout I know very well, and it's very busy. It's 500,000 people live in Sheffield, so it's a bigger town than it is here, and it's full of students because there's 2 universities. I also was going to comment back on the 2C. I really like this design too. So I have kind of 2 favorites. I'm always going to love the roundabout because I grew up with roundabouts and I think they're amazing. But I do really like this. My only concern would be making sure that it's maneuverable enough for longer and wider bikes, like my bike, and for bikes with trailers. Sometimes these sharp corners can be very challenging. I often have to get off my bike and do kind of a back and forth kind of motion to try and get my bike around the corners. So just kind of taking that into account, especially as I see people using trailers all the time. And so making maybe some of these turns with a bike might be a little challenging. But I do like the design. I like how it's all separated on this one. I would also suggest Taylor sent a really great video this week, which I watched, and talked about having individual lights for every single lane, so that every lane has its own signal. So right turn goes at this time, left turn only at this time, straight only this time, so that it's very it's much safer for everyone, so there's no one is ever crossing at the same time. So pedestrian would never be being directed at the same time someone's turning right, but you can time it in a way that different lanes of traffic could be moving at the same time, but on opposite sides, so that it's still moving traffic through quickly, but only in a very directed way. So I really like that part of the design, and also having the traffic lights on the near side makes way more sense, because you can see the traffic lights earlier, and it stops people from edging forward all the time, which people do all the time in America, because you can't see the traffic light if you're ahead of it. So if it's on the same side as where the cars are, then I think it's a much safer route to go. So that's my comments. I like everything you've done so far, so I think it's looking great.
Thank you.
Yes, thanks for the presentation. Just to follow up on what Board Member McKee Burrows just referenced, do all of these designs include near side signals?
So that would be kind of a final design decision. Right now, we've just shown that it's a signalized intersection. I think the configuration and the phasing, like how we would phase those, we'd work out as we go through. So we don't know that yet. I would work with your traffic department to sort out what would make sense.
Okay, well, I agree with her that there seem to be some definite advantages in terms of pedestrian safety to having near side signals. Would there be any permissive signals at all? Any movements that have permissive signals?
So I think what we're assuming right now is we would have protected lefts. And I don't know if they'd always be protected only lefts. We had talked about having so if a pedestrian activation comes, that it's protected only, otherwise we give. So we're kind of working through some of the accident data. We did have an accident pattern here of right angle accidents with left turns. And so even the vehicle to vehicle piece, I think we're leaning towards recommending protected only left turns. Now for right turns, right now, we could do a mix. So we could also have protected only right turns, right? So you'd have a red arrow for the right turn. And it would kind of depend on what option we end up going for. So like an intersection like this, sometimes you have a little higher restriction, an assignment of right of way. So I think that's still to be determined, but appreciate the input and the questions. And I'll just write them down, and we'll work them through the process.
Okay, also regarding option 2C, I can see a lot of benefits to the protected intersection design, but I am concerned about deliberately mixing bicyclists and pedestrians on the sidewalk in the crosswalk areas at the intersection. So has that been a consideration for you in your design work?
Yeah, so I can kind of explain how this works. So the idea is that the bicycles and pedestrians have separate space behind the curb.
I can see that on the
Yeah.
design, but
But how would it work in real life?
If I push the pedestrian
Yeah.
signal and I know I'm going to be waiting there for 45 seconds, I don't stand stock still. I might be wandering around,
Right.
looking all over the place. And to have, e-bikes, cargo bikes, mixing with pedestrians in that space, it just seems like it might have some dangers of its own.
Yeah, so that is a consideration, and you're right. Real life versus school life, I guess. But yes, in this space, right, there wouldn't be a physical barrier between those two. In this sort of configuration, the bikes remain at street level, and the pedestrians are removed by a curb. We also have, there's some ideas that have been tried around the US of having some vertical separation between the bike and ped modes as well. So you can have kind of like a half curb. So like imagine a 3-inch vertical curb between the bike and the ped, providing that space. So there's some things we could do, but yeah, I appreciate that. That is a concern. And with the e-bike traffic, now you might have, a 20-mile-an-hour bicycle coming through, and that could be a high impact crash. So we've been trying to think about that more too, as bike ped collisions and how to reduce those.
Okay, and my final question has to do with the roundabout. And it's really for my fellow board members who have experience with European roundabouts. It seems like this design requires a lot of outer direction travel and a lot more time for the cyclist. Has it been your experience that approaching a roundabout, a number of cyclists would simply take the lane and navigate the roundabout as if, they were a vehicle, to avoid the delay of, leaving the roadway, going through the crosswalk with pedestrians and so forth? Taylor's got a response.
From my experience, from Sweden, Denmark, Netherlands, New Zealand, generally no, but that's also because there's a focus on separation compared to what we do here, where generally it's a painted bicycle gutter. So there it's all vertical separation in some way or another. In Sweden, especially in smaller towns, you have very wide walkways, and then they just split up in half. So one side is for bikes, the other side is for ped. So then it's automatic separation just by building a walkway. But generally you stay within where you're supposed to be. I think your concern is valid, but that's because we don't have that separation citywide. So. But we'll get there.
I agree with board member Wickland that in my experience of all the many places in the world I've traveled at this point, people stay in their lane, bikes and peds. The only time is when a ped is from a different country and they start walking in the middle of the bike lane, and then they soon learn where they should be walking, because a cyclist will come along and tell them. But I would say very quickly, even in Longmont, where this will be a new concept, everyone's going to learn really quick, because it's going to be it's obvious by the colouring, and especially if there's some small physical barriers between the two, that's going to make it super obvious for everyone to learn very quickly. So I wouldn't worry too much about that.
All right, thanks for sharing your experience, and that's it for me.
Thank you for the presentation. Since we're on the roundabout, how long would it take to acquire all of the corners for the additional land? How long would that take?
I would estimate it would take a few years to acquire that right away. In part, you're dealing with not just a state highway, but it's a federal highway as well. So there's processes involved. And it will be rather expensive for any procurement of right-of-way outside of the existing right-of-way that's there today.
So it would be expensive for the land acquisition as well as the construction for the roundabout, correct?
Yeah, I was just referring to acquisition of the right-of-way.
Right.
Because with the federal requirements, you're not displacing anybody, although that southeast corner looks a little tight with the existing business. But loss of business, federal requirements get really convoluted with right-of-way. So it would be pricey and it would take some time.
Great, thank you. I do like this. My family's from Austria, and there's also a lot of roundabouts in Austria. I love this design. This would be a first for many things for Longmont. The pedestrian beacons is something that would be new. I don't think the city has any, do they? The red flashing beacons? The hawk signals? Right. So I don't know if that's what would be proposed for the final design, but that would be new for Longmont as well. So, you know, a major roundabout plus new bike paths and or these hawk signals are new for Longmont. So I think it would take some time for all users, either pedestrians or cyclists or motorists, to learn this. I'm curious what the design speed, I see that you have the design speed on the roundabout, but what's the design speed for the other options?
Yeah, great question. So, you know, with the signalized intersection, there wouldn't really be the intersection wouldn't control the speed, right? And so there's no geometric change to that. Right now, the speed limits are 35 on the west, 30 on the east, and 35 on 287 on both sides. We had talked about pursuing a reduction in speed limit on 21st, especially on the west side, as part of this project. But if you wanted to go 100 through the intersection, you could, right? There's nothing other than your conscience and enforcement causing you to do that. So there's a difference there, but the turning speeds, which are really the most important, we'd be shooting for like 15 miles an hour or less for those speeds. That would be a goal.
Great. And then with the other options, if you go to like 2C, what are for the protected bike lanes that are leading up to the intersections, what is the proposed medium for that protected bike lane? Is it just paint, or is it plastic pylons or concrete?
Yeah, so I think the vertical element is still to be figured out, and that would be, it kind of ties into your system about what other options you're doing around the city. So like in Denver, we use these white flex posts. They're pretty inexpensive, but there's some maintenance, and you know, some people find them unsightly. There's armadillos, which are kind of a low item. You know, there's a lot of different ideas, or other places we're using like a raised asphalt curb with flow through underneath, so we're not affecting drainage. There's a lot of choices there. I think that's still up for input, I think, about what that looks like. We haven't decided anything yet, but there would be something back to your point about guiding people, so like in the roundabout, guiding them to where we want them.
Great. And then my opinion, since we're on this one, I like the position where the cyclists are next to the pedestrians. I think that it would make it safer for all users. As a newer cyclist in Longmont, I don't feel comfortable riding with traffic across the signal, across an intersection. So for me, as an intermediate bike rider, this would be more comfortable for me, and especially if I were coming from east going to west with King Soopers or something, I would use something like this to go to King Soopers to go grocery store shopping. While if I were more intermingled with traffic, I probably wouldn't use this to do errands in that shopping complex. So I really like 2C, but I also like the one that has the island. So I think that's that one as well. So if we could incorporate both of those designs, where somehow we move the cyclists closer to the pedestrians, I would like a combination of both of those. And then one last question is on like the roundabout and or all of these other options, where would the proposed RTD or flex bus stops be for any of these options?
Yeah, so that's more of the bus rapid transit issue, and it's kind of going on a parallel but separate track than this. We have talked about how this integrates in with the proposed more mid-block crossing both to the north. So there's a north stop that's associated with bus rapid transit, about the 22nd Avenue alignment, so between 23rd and 21st would be that mid-block piece. So there's a bus stop there's a pretty nice bus shelter on the west side today, just north of this location. And then also to the further to the south, it would be more like the 19th. So between 17th and basically 21st, there's another location for a bus stop there.
So one of the comments that we heard during the Vision Zero meeting is bus stops that aren't very close to a crosswalk being an issue, where people are either having to walk a large distance to get to a crosswalk or crossing unprotected.
Right. I should be clear that we are planning to do a mid-block crossing there that would connect the two BRT stops, bus rapid transit stops on either side. So they have a brother-sister stop, we call them. So a sister stop to the stop. Those would be paired up, and they would have a mid-block crossing in between them already. So this is more of the intersection treatment at 21st, and then we'd have the mid-block crossings both south and north of this for those bus riders.
Perfect.
So it's starting to integrate into the whole system.
Awesome. Thank you. And then one last question, since I heard that this is going to take maybe until 2027 to begin construction, is there something that we can start to do now, like changing the lights to have signaled turns? Is there something that we can do now before 2027 to make this intersection a little bit safer with light phasing or?
So as the intersection stands today, if we increased any signal heads like that, we'd have to do a full rewire of the intersection. So it was originally wired just to support what is currently out there. So we're looking at a sizable price tag to redo all the conduits, pull all the new wire, and set up all the new signal heads. So it would be a sizable effort for a year's worth of operation.
So follow up, would we put a speed camera or a traffic red light camera here in the meantime?
That's still in the works of where we're exactly putting all that equipment. We still have not selected a vendor as of yet.
Okay.
But that's led by PD right now, and we'll have information as soon as that's concrete.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yep.
Okay, I got a lot of questions. So I guess some basic stuff on the existing intersection right now. We have ped counts.
Yeah, so we collected traffic data within the last 2 months, 3 months, I think. So we have recent data on peds, bikes, and vehicles.
Okay, and we know Main obviously is the main through, and then 21st not as much.
Yep.
Right. Okay. Because I'm looking at the crash report data, and it looks like, at least at this intersection, doesn't really fall within the red zone for ped, fatal, and bike, as opposed to other intersections on Main Street. So I prefer the 2C to be kind of angle, because I don't know if we need something as dramatic as a roundabout if we're concerned about safety, since this isn't one of the problematic intersections, at least from what I see from the data from the crash report. Have we incorporated any of the crash report as an overlay into this?
Yeah, so input to this process has been traffic data, crash data, other planning documents, the Vision Zero plan, the BRT study, all those sort of things. So we have reviewed that crash data, and then actually our team, members of our team did the intersection prioritization study that CDOT led, and that led to some interventions that were recommended. They're mostly operational.
Sure.
That they talked about. But yeah, we... I guess in terms of it's in context with the rest of the city, I think that's more of a Longmont thing. For this intersection, I think we've looked at that and incorporated.
And does CDOT own the traffic controllers and the signal, or you own it? We own it?
So the right-of-way is CDOT's. We do maintain the traffic signal system, so we pay for all that. We retain the equipment since we are specialized and different off what CDOT's using, so we generally keep the equipment. But we do have agreements in place where we kind of share that cost.
Sure. And I guess my follow-up is,
So to answer your question, ownership of the signal cabinets and the hardware at the intersection it's owned by CDOT.
Yeah.
City has a maintenance agreement
right.
that funds any replacements and upgrades. Usually when we do upgrade signals on Main Street, CDOT funds the majority of the costs for the hardware.
Right. And so with respect to this having progression on 287, that CDOT likes to see, and I know we manage it, Are you running any sort of adaptive with the new controllers? Because I know you talked about doing it on some of the corridors. And then as it relates to that and what you're trying to do with progression, have you looked at or do you have examples of what roundabouts would do versus what a road dieted intersection or compact intersection would do with respect to platoon movement on 287?
Yeah, so we're at this design process right now is still really early. Usually use some modeling once you kind of get maybe one or two options available if it comes down to a level of service. So we can definitely down the line model that, how that looks, how cars flow through the intersection. The hardest part about having a roundabout in this kind of area is you kind of lose that control of when cars get to go and when they have to stop. So you lose that group of cars you can progress through a signal. What could happen through a roundabout is you might get some aggressive drivers, you might get some timid drivers, and that kind of acts like a really bad slinky. So in areas where you have a lot of aggressive drivers, it might start going faster. But when you have more timid drivers, they may approach the intersection a bit slower, and that creates that conflict through the intersection. So there's a lot more variability when it comes to having a roundabout operation. And the hardest part about between 17th and 23rd is we have 2 points of control, and that's going to be 23rd and 17th. So we know the vehicles will be coming through there, but as they progress through the corridor, we can't control them at that point. And then come 21st Avenue, there's not a lot of signals, and their arrivals are pretty random. Most of the traffic comes from the side streets, and they just kind of come, first serve. So that's a lot more harder to control that flow and platoon the vehicles, especially going east-west.
Great. Okay, and then I'll just comment on the roundabout as a cyclist who's ridden a lot of roundabouts in Europe and in the U.S. Not many cyclists are going to use that outer bound green band. They're going to go through the roundabout. I'm just saying. So you're going to have not conflict, but you're going to have the slinky effect that Kyle mentioned would be even more pronounced with a cyclist being on the roundabout. I noticed that if you go to Fort Collins, not that that's a problem, but generally the roundabout is shared by both vehicles and bikes, and the bikes have a tendency, they just do. You can go a little faster, and you kind of end up kind of being in the car's way. That's just a comment, my own personal experience. And then I guess the last thing is, with respect to the protected intersection 2C, on the right-hand turns, and I like this. I mean, personally, I like this a lot because it could use a lot of the tools that we have with Vision Zero. But with respect to the intermediate solutions of red light camera, speed camera, that's something we could incorporate regardless of if we're able to move forward with this. And I know that that's still getting funding and what have you with that. What about the no turn on red? Have we identified any intersections that we would even try to do that? And again, in other words, would this be a starter kit for us to be doing Vision Zero in other intersections?
Yeah, so we actually have some PROC meetings with CDOT scheduled as part of Vision Zero, and part of that's going to be looking at operations of signals. So protected only intersections, i.e. You can only turn left on a green arrow, no flashing yellow arrow, either all the time or just late at night operations where it's a concern, as well as when pedestrians are present, shut it off. Goes for the same of right turns is no right turn on red or have the right arrow operation. That's something that's on the table for Vision Zero. There's areas that we have identified that could benefit from that. A lot of it comes with CDOT collaboration and being consistent, especially when we look at on federal or state highway roadways.
Sure. No, it makes perfect sense. And then the last thing would be on 21st and Main, do we have, in other words, 21st is a minor arterial. Is that what we call it? And we don't really have a lot of, let's say, delivery traffic on 21st. My only concern might be with respect to, again, being a protected intersection and essentially a road diet. Are the turning radiuses going to be too tight that, let's say, even a 27 or 30-foot delivery truck is going to have a challenge maybe making some of the right-hand turns if there were let's say, the median?
Yeah, I can address that. So we haven't gotten there yet, but we will run turning templates in our AutoCAD program, We have talked about, so 21st west of Maine is a designated truck route today. So that means we have a certain design vehicle we'd have to accommodate. We are discussing modifying that designation, removing it. And our design vehicle would be one of three. So either a school bus, an SU-30, so like a panel delivery kind of truck, right? Or fire. And our experience is that the school bus usually dictates. The fire can do other things that the bus can't do. So yeah, so we're looking at that, and that's a good observation and something we need to tweak to get those radii right.
Great. Okay, thank you. And it looks like,
Thank you. I just wanted to follow up on a couple ideas also, like if we do talk about the roundabout. I know during BIC I mentioned kind of level crossings on 21st, so just want that to be said publicly as well, to help that slow down, but then increase that north-south traffic for ped and bike easeability. And then also, secondly, I just want to kind of disagree with Chair Lehner about bikes using the lanes. I would say today's cyclists maybe, but my concern is the future people who aren't currently on a bike, and considering we are seeing a heightened increase with people purchasing e-bikes, and probably a lot more timid cyclists will probably stick to what is properly marked, as long as if it is properly marked, to take the roundabout, and that's, you know, majority of the population are timid people who won't get on a bike, and that's who I would hope are going to be using this.
I thought of a couple more questions that I had thought about at home, but I just remembered since we've been sitting here. Since you've been monitoring traffic, I'm going to guess you know the current capacity of how many cars are going through per day. Like how many is like peak and off peak?
Yeah, good. I don't know if I remember off the top of my head. I want to say in the peak hour, like PM peak, it was like 3,000 vehicles on 287 and 1,000 on 21st-ish. Usually, like a good rule of thumb is 10x. So kind of think of that scale. I can pull the actual numbers, but yeah, that's what I recall.
Okay, because I was looking at like capacity for different, how many lanes of roundabouts, and that sounds like it's a 2-lane roundabout capacity.
Yeah, but our capacity, yeah, right. Our capacity. So what we measured is actual traffic through, right? And the operations is okay. So probably we're accommodating vehicles that want to get through today.
Okay. Related to that, I'm just thinking of like into the future. Like, have you considered about how capacity might change over time, like increasing or decreasing, and how these different scenarios might accommodate each one of those?
Yeah, so good question. So we've looked at today and 2045, 2050. We've grown traffic to try to see. At this point, we've done very initial preliminary analyses. And what you find is that all these options struggle in under 2050 traffic. The roundabout a little more than the signalized options, but it really depends on how we phase it, right? How we assign right away. So I would say a general statement would be, you know, we'll probably not be able to accommodate everybody at a level of service, you know, your level of service minimum threshold in 2050 here, and we'll have to make different choices.
Okay.
Yep.
What about if in future there will hopefully be a large increase in cyclists, and how is the ability of each of these different scenarios able to handle a, say, 100% increase in cyclists going through? Like, imagine blocks of like 10 people sitting there waiting to cross. How are each of those going to be able to handle?
Yes, I think it comes down to a couple things. So one of the things I was going to mention, you reminded me, was we are trying to design, like, so I'm a pretty experienced cyclist. I wouldn't have any problem going through this intersection with no aid, right? But we're trying to make it safe for everybody. So I think that's a key thing, is the more comfortable it feels, the more people will feel like going through it, and we'll get a better change. I think that the capacity of, I would say the bike peg capacity of almost all these options would be adequate. I think there's ways we could look at the width of those lanes. Like, so sometimes when we do things like this, you know, the first cut is like 6 to 7 feet of space for the cyclist. If you're expecting higher volumes and people want to ride side by side, you might do 8.5, something like that. I think that's a design detail we'd work through.
Okay. And then I know you haven't looked at any of the costs yet, but I think thinking about not only just like the actual building cost, but the long-term costs of maintenance are really important. Like signalized intersections are more expensive than, say, a roundabout because they require maintenance of the actual electric. So have you kind of started into that, thinking about those types of questions?
Yeah, so at this level, we've sort of thought of them in orders of magnitude, like dollar signs. I would say that the cost clearly goes up from the first to the last option, the construction cost. One of the other things we've been talking about is constructability. So this is very hard to construct without shutting the intersection down. It's hard to do it pieces parts. These other ones we could kind of phase the construction. So we think they're easier to build, the signalized intersections than the roundabout. In terms of maintenance, I think in terms of markings and signings, they're all pretty similar. I think you're right. The signals do require ongoing maintenance and all that. I believe the agreement with CDOT would, you know, essentially you guys get money to do signal maintenance. So I don't know if it's a wash for the city. There are some considerations we need to talk through if we advance a roundabout with plowing and how that works. We've discussed it with some other jurisdictions in the area about how they would do that, how to raise table crossings, work with the equipment you have, that kind of stuff. But those are things that we're still looking at. I would say there's not, the maintenance differences are small, I would say, and the construction, and I know it's easy to focus on upfront cost. And if this was 100 years, right, then that cost gets really big. So to your point, yeah, that's something we're considering.
Okay. And of course, as much as we wouldn't want to put a cost on per person safety, ultimately that's kind of what you're talking about, like how much is someone's potential life worth? If someone died in an intersection here and you made a choice where it wasn't quite as safe for a pedestrian, then you kind of made that change in price as the cost of their death, if you want to say. Does that make sense? If you pick like just the option 1, that's obviously not quite as safe as something like roundabout, which would be the ultimate safety but more expensive. I hope that makes sense.
So the concept makes total sense to me. You know, we haven't traditionally, I know that there have been some like total system cost evaluations of these kind of things. That isn't something that we're doing at this time. One of the reasons would be the predictive models are pretty tricky about, so like roundabouts have pretty good, to be honest, like in the UK and Australia, there are accident prediction models that come with the design software, and you can kind of see that. We have ideas about percent reductions we'd expect in crashes, that we could apply that. We've sort of rolled that into safety and comfort more than cost. So I guess that's something we could consider if that was input about how we would value the options. So we're open to input.
Okay. I'm just going to make sure that I haven't got any more questions for. No, I think that's it. Okay. And I just want to also second that thinking about a raised crosswalk as well would be something to think about too, especially with the design number 2C, I think is. That would be a really good way of super slowing people down because no one wants to bottom out their car. So having a raised crosswalk there would be really nice, especially over 21st. Anyway, thank you.
Councilmember Yarborough?
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. Man, listening to everyone, so many choices and options, right? I myself personally would love to have the roundabout on Kim Pratt in Maine and 66 in Maine. That would be the best for me. I think that will be the safest roundabout, and I think that would help the traffic more so 21st and Main, I like 2C and 2B together, like your idea, but also from the video that Taylor sent, I like the lights in the back, well, right there where the cars are. So if we can integrate B and C with the raised sidewalk and the lights back more, that would be, I think, great, ideal. I just think that the roundabout, it will, of course, take time, but because it's a federal highway and it's highly utilized right there, I know it would take time for people to get used to that roundabout right there, but I think the larger intersections, like the most huge traffic area, like I would really love to see that at Kim Pratt and Main to slow traffic down. And then also 66 in Main, I think it would be like ideal for me. But the roundabout solution I think is great, and I know it would take people, oh my God, I'll be off of city council then, so it won't matter. All the complaints of, people trying to figure this out. Why did you do this? And, all those things. I definitely will have to have a lot of community engagement and education as to how this, will work, because people have a hard time with change, whether they can see it being beneficial for them or, more safe for them. They may not see that. They just see this as a humongous change in their regular daily traffic. And so that would be a conflict for them. So I just think whatever you all choose and decide, make sure that there is plenty of community engagement, educating them the difference of why we're doing what we're doing, and that's very important. Yeah, if we can get this roundabout like this on Kim Pratt and Main, I think that will help a lot of traffic on up and down 119 and Kim Pratt. Just my suggestion. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks again for the presentation. Looks like there's nothing else. So, any follow-up comments?
The last thing I wanted to say is we have a public meeting coming up. So this is part of our public process. Really appreciate your time. You guys had a lot of great questions, and I know we took a lot of time. So appreciate your patience and interest. On Wednesday, January 29th from 5 till 7, we'll have a public meeting. We won't have decided what the answers are. The idea is to bring all this to the public, and we're sort of previewing that with you to get refinements. And we'll be at the Moose Lodge on 21st, just west of Main. So we'd love to see you all there, and we'll be doing a public notification campaign starting in about 4 weeks out from that. We'll start really hitting it and trying to really get the word out and get people there. So I appreciate your time. That's all I had, and that's it.
Okay, Phil, do we want to go on to the 2024 annual report and then the work plan for 2025?
Yes, I would like to do that if we can get that in here for the last. We're just really introducing a few things to you, and I wanted to kind of see if we can get it on this monitor for you all to see, and especially for me to see. So we do need to get your vote. This is an action item tonight for the 11 regular meetings that we held in 2024, including this one. So we only took 1 month off, believe it or not. So pretty good for a TAB. I think we usually take a couple months off if we can, but we always have that one meeting in July now that really is a critical work meeting, because we bring on new TAB members in the middle of the year. So it becomes, that July meeting becomes kind of our annual meeting. But I went through our agendas. We've done a couple of different things. We had the peak service study for the Northwest Rail. We had the snow and ice clearing plan. We had Vision Zero coordinator introductions and VZ updates. We had transportation mobility plan updates, 2 of those. We had a first and main update. We had 287 and 287, I guess. Vision Zero safety and mobility study. That's something that that I think Jim just addressed on kind of those next steps have already kind of started forward. Then the microtransit funding and update. As you can see, we've started that, and so this is exciting times. RTD State of the Longmont System update. They come every once a year and tell us about the state of the system. We always kind of drill them a little bit there. Front Range Passenger Rail update. Save our open space ballot position recommendation to City Council. That did pass per your recommendation. Subcommittee to interview new TAB applicants for City Council review. So that's more of an administrative piece that we do internally. Then you have your annual board elections, typically in that July meeting timeframe after we get their new board members. 2024 Capital Improvement Program update, reviewing comments on Public Works, Natural Resources, operational, I guess it's just Public Works now, operational budget, proposed 5-year CIP list of projects. We're going to do that a little earlier next year. Or no, the review will be a little earlier next year in February. Traffic signal system update, you got that from Kyle a couple months ago. Flex bus, we talked a little bit about that. And the high crash location summary in October typically. The 21st and main concept design tonight, and then the work plan and annual report tonight. So if you have any questions or comments on those, we can go back through some agendas, but that's what we pulled off your agendas for 2024. So we're hoping that you can approve that. We can move it forward as a council item just to show that here's the things you got done in 2024 so that they can see your progress.
Phil, the list looks great. You just forgot one of my favorite items we did, and that was being the first city to eliminate parking minimums.
Great.
Yeah.
We'll add that in.
Yeah.
Did we bring that here?
So if we don't have any other additions to that, we can move to a vote to approve.
Yes, I'll move that the board approve our 2024 annual report.
I'll second it.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Nope. Okay.
So we'll add that one piece, I think.
Yeah,
though
we'll
I
add that
didn't- I
one
didn't hear
piece.
it in the motion, but I think that's understood.
It is.
Okay.
Yep. Thank you.
The second part of this is, and this is really kind of more like homework at this point. So the 2025 proposed Transportation Advisory Board work plan and schedule. This is very typical of what we do. I have added some things and moved some things around. So there are some newer things on this list, but it's pretty typical that we talk about the regional items as needed. We do have we will include a Mustang ridership because we now have a new mobility hub at 119 and I-25 that we talked about earlier. So we'd really like to get that information to you in the third quarter once we have a year's worth of data, I think, at that point. So we'll have a year's worth of data for Mustang ridership out there and give you some ideas of how that's being utilized. I think that's important. We also have the North Front Range, the idea that there's an update on the flex ridership. So that is a critical piece too, get you some better information on that in the third quarter. And then always in the first quarter, usually in March, we try to get the Regional Transportation District in front of you to talk about what's going on, the state of the system. And so we'll plan that out as well. We're assuming that you want to hear more about the Front Range Passenger Rail. So I've kind of set aside some time in quarter number 2 for that progress. They're having some turnover right now. So there's some iffy things going on, but by then we'll have a pretty good idea, I think, of where we stand with Front Range Passenger Rail and where it is, and if it's going forward full steam ahead or if it's or where it is. So those things are happening at the regional level. Then the Transportation Mobility Plan, we will bring that back to you in February. It's not listed here, but we will bring that back to you early in February to make a recommendation to City Council. So we're looking forward to that. Unfortunately, we also have another item, the current 2025 CIP projects coming to you in February too. So that could be a busy month. So we may want to think about how that looks. Might try to get you TMP in January if we can. We'll see how that goes. And then we show the candidate projects for the 2026-2030 capital improvement program. That's usually done in quarter number 2 as well. Let's see. I can be able to read that one up there. So I will continue down and talk about your tab work plan and annual report. We obviously have got the annual report completed tonight with the addition, so I appreciate that. And then we'll really finalize this work plan. So I want you to take it home and think about what you'd like to see or what's not shown, or maybe there's some things on here that we have as ongoing that you're saying, hey, I'd really like to get a specific report on this. And again, these are kind of historic projects typically. So if you have something that's a new project that's not listed, let us know, because we typically take last year's and try to rework it a little bit. But if you can help us with that, that would be wonderful. So at the next meeting in January, we will talk about what you want to see for your work plan and finalize it in an action item. So we'll be doing that. Then the 2026 budget is usually in quarter number 1. So Jim will come forward with that information, hopefully. And then in May, we'll do the candidate interviews for TAB based on all the different folks. I need to review who's going to be staying with us, and we need to talk about who's not staying with us. So I hope everybody's willing to stay, and we'll have to talk about terms on that one. Then quarter 4 is always our crash report, usually early in that quarter. Quiet zones, we'll be coming forward with some quiet zone information. We hopefully will have some new information for you on quiet zones, as we have a new project manager on that who just started about less than a month ago. The traffic safety fund, we still draw dollars from traffic tickets for a traffic safety fund. So we'd like to work with you on how those dollars get spent. It's not very many dollars, but it's important to talk about how that money is spent in the system. And now that we have Vision Zero, we're thinking that will be more of a tie-in, so you'll see more of that coming together. We have our annual meeting usually in July or August, depending on if we have that July meeting. So we'll talk about how that annual meeting goes forward. And then, again, you'll see a number of ongoing items. We do have the Vision Zero as an ongoing, so I have that listed as ongoing, but you'll get a lot of information on that, because I think you're going to see that a lot during the next year, quite frankly, as the action plan moves forward on that. We're starting to get further along in that task force piece. And just a reminder to everyone that the next task force is that Monday, December 16th at 6 p.m. here in the council chambers. So if you can make it, that would be wonderful. You can see that there's been a lot of public input and interest in that. Microtransit started today, so we will definitely have more information to you regarding microtransit, give you that update on ridership and all the issues that we're seeing there. So those are the few things that we're seeing for this. Yeah, perfect. Okay. I just want to let you know that we'll be in front of you with updates, but ongoing would be best. So we'll take that as your information from next time as well. But again, this is just an introduction, so if you can just let me know next in January, we'll put it on as a formal action item. That's all I have for this. Thank you.
Yep, Phil, it looks like you've just carried over this year's Vision Zero comments to next year's. Maybe you could get a hint from Cammie on what we might expect.
Thank you.
Great, thank you, Phil. I guess what we can do here is wrap up with comments from city council. From board members. Oh.
Phil, it all looks good. The bike code. I just want to kind of highlight planning and zoning commissioners moved a motion to talk about kind of bike parking amounts, how they were determined, and maybe update them, and then also what trends they're looking at. So I don't want to involve double time and hear 2 presentations, but maybe if we could be informed when planning and zoning is going to be hearing a presentation from you guys about that, I think that will be helpful for us as well.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Okay, for comments, final comments, I'm going to start with Board Member Kalkofer. You can start, and we'll go this way. Oh, I'm sorry. That's my fault.
I have a lot, so I'll try to go fast. The Boston Greenway Bridge, it looks fantastic. Great job on that. I'm really excited to start using that. I've been using it for driving. I'm excited to use it for the trail as well. So good work on your all's point with that and the contractor. One comment about the Kaufman construction project. I've heard a lot from businesses that they're impacted a lot when it comes to closures of cross streets. So I don't know if we can work a little bit differently to see how we can help those businesses like Luna Cafe or Sweet Cow. I know there's that throughway now, but it seems like some of them are a little bit disruptive, and I'm a little nervous as we come farther south that we're gonna be more disruptive to some of those businesses that really rely on that.
That's interesting information, as our project manager has been working very closely with all those different businesses, and they have not relayed any of those comments to him as of yet. They seem to be very positive about the project, and access is staying open. Our project manager is doing an amazing job trying to keep that project going and working with those businesses. So I'll turn it over to Jim.
Yeah, I'll echo what Phil said, as well as we've been working with the LDDA as well. They have a pretty good handle in conversing with the businesses. So when we hear anything, we do directly meet with them, try to see what we can do. There will be some impacts, but we have, I think we're inside management staff meets every 2 weeks and talks about the projects in the downtown area, the hotel, Kaufman Street, Safety and Justice Building. And we talk through some of those things and impacts and how to address them. So it is, we are working on, when we hear things, we do pretty much try to deal with them as they come up.
Great, thank you. One comment is if we can street sweep the bike lanes on major roads. I've been biking a lot more, and a lot of the bike lanes have a lot of debris in them. So I don't know if we can also request the street sweepers to also clear out the bike lanes. That would be great.
Just a quick comment on that too. There's a service works comment on street sweeping that we can do. If you want to send that in to us, we can send it in, or you can do it online, or anybody can do it online as well. But we can certainly take those comments on locations if you can provide us the actual location. And I have a few as well, so
okay,
thanks.
Yeah, I can put some in those service work comments. The Vision Zero meetings are great. I've been attending all of them, and I hope that some of you all would also join those as well. The attendance has been great from the community, so those have been really helpful, and Cammie's been doing a great job. I'm really excited about our first supercharger going in behind Starbucks across from the fire station on Pratt Parkway. That intersection that I brought up during last comment with the new right turn, I don't know if you all are making some considerations about the new traffic flow that would be going to that supercharger. That's right there. But I am really excited that we are getting our first supercharger, so that's awesome. And then just curious when we're looking at updating some of our design standards. Do we have an update on if that's going to be coming up next year, or?
So currently, council, I think we're taking a new section of, it's called Section 800 of our urbanized design standards in front of City Council. I think the first reading is next week. They did a zero reading a few weeks ago. We are currently working on early next year looking at continuing the process we had about 5 years ago where we were upgrading design standards. But we anticipate that as we move those forward, we'll be doing it on a more regular basis. And part of that would be part of the Vision Zero Action Plan, because we're looking at not just utilizing MUTCD. We're looking at outside the box for other standards. But we're first going to start bringing in some of the utility standards first, starting with the urbanized ones and then some of the utilities. So that'll be more than likely coming forward in the first half of next year.
Great. And then last thing, thank you for all the staff for getting involved with any community who's outreaching. Kyle, I know you went to see Sam the other day, so you all are always willing to go talk to the public, so I really appreciate you guys going out there and speaking on behalf of the city, so thank you.
Thank you to staff for this evening's presentations. I have no further comments or questions.
So I really enjoyed the process of looking at the 21st and Main intersection. It was really great to like kind of get into some of the nitty gritty of like seeing how the process works and having some good dialogue with the people who are actually designing it. So that was I really appreciated that process, and I'm looking forward to seeing where they go with it from now on. I would say that I have been traveling again. And I was recently in the Netherlands, the home of cycling. I also was in Belgium and Germany for that same trip. And I just was comparing like cycling in the 3 different countries since I was in the 3 places. And really the number of people that cycle is definitely related to the amount of infrastructure. So if there's infrastructure of any kind, the number of cyclists went up a massive amount. When I was in Germany, there was no infrastructure in Aachen, and there was no bikes. And when I was in Bruges, there was there's a few bikes, and then of course Amsterdam, there's bikes everywhere. And I have to say, the bike parking, that if you ever get to see it, the underground bike parking next to the train station is amazing. Like, it's so cool seeing thousands and thousands of bikes parked, and seeing it just being such a part of their daily life. So, but I did notice also that there's not as much protected bike lanes as I would have thought. Like, we always talk about we're going to have protected bike lanes all the time. And really, like, yeah, there's protected bike lanes, but the majority are just stripes on roads. It's not that protected, but hundreds of people are using them all the time. So I feel like there's like, once you get to a certain point in momentum, just the sheer number of people on bikes is enough to deter cars from having so many incidents. So, I don't know, I just thought it was interesting. I was expecting to be like everywhere to be separated and divided, but really it wasn't as much as I thought. But of course there was large areas where cars just couldn't go at all, so that helped a lot. So, if you ever get to visit, definitely recommend it. It's one of my favorite places.
Oh, that sounds interesting. See, I have a couple comments. First, Councilmember Yarborough, your mention of roundabouts on 66 and 119. Look up turbo roundabouts. They're kind of interesting as well. It would dictate a underpass though for ped and cycleway. And then a couple comments. I did send an email about Kaufman Street, kind of the bikeway. Never got a response on the color question. I've noticed that the elevated protected bikeway and the sidewalk are the same style concrete. I was hoping for something dyed that would probably last longer. But then also I'm hoping there's going to be a definition there so people don't take over the bikeway.
Yeah, I thought you said some recommendations as well for different
Yeah.
things. So I think that's what we took was, here's some recommendations that we could use. So the idea is that we would put some definition on those bike lanes to identify them as separate than the walkway.
Yeah.
We're working right now with doing some on concrete, on path striping or color striping with the green.
Yeah.
And probably as a lead in, so it would lead you in to it, then it would not be there for kind of the bulk of it as once you got onto it, you would know that you were on the bicycling path, but there would be signage. So we're working with a bunch of different things, and it is a cost savings measure really on our end to not have done the dyed concrete or the colored concrete in that one, but we are seeing that that's gonna be an issue, so we
Yeah.
need to address it as best we
I
can.
want it to be safe for everyone, and for the people wanting to use the bikeway are actually gonna enjoy it. See, another question I have is, I was gone during the month of the August meeting, but I understand there was a motion presented to kind of stop widening roads and focus on separation. Just question if that has to go through council as well, and when that would occur. No? Okay. Or is it just kind of lost to lost ears in this room?
I guess we'll have to go back and review what the actual motion
Okay.
stated, because I don't think we didn't take it up to council, obviously,
Alright.
but that might be something for TAB to do.
So as I understand it, that as TAB is an advisory board, it would go up as a recommendation,
Yeah.
more than likely as an informational item
Okay.
for council then to decide whether they want to act on it or not. So we'll have to follow up to see what
Yeah.
we may have done.
Like, I know it takes council for anything that we say here to be actionable, so just want to verify that. And then also from the public comment, I hope this kind of starts with the Vision Zero program in CAMI, but related to the public comment is, I would love to see Longmont start doing more actionable, quick purpose items. So my brother lives in Cap Hill, Denver. They set up a bunch of delineators that actually get run over by fire trucks all the time, and they pop back up, but it created a temporary, quick, cheap crossing island for people to cross. So maybe start thinking of modal filters. How do we slow down that traffic without a flashing sign? Maybe a very wide chicane via delineators to slow down the traffic down the hill. But that kind of goes anywhere in the city. So instead of going through a 10-month design phase, we could maybe do something tomorrow. So that's my recommendation. Thank you.
All right. So I noticed that last month, City Council passed an ordinance that would give a green light to traffic cameras. Not a fan, but I think that as a board, that we should be open to the idea of where these would be most effective, if anywhere. And I also am very excited about the Ride Longmont being launched. I have been avidly testing the Flex ride that RTD is doing, and the delays are immense. Like, I've not, out of the dozen times that I tried it, there was not a single time that they were within the 5-minute window that they were trying to honor. And it seems like they have a very serious software issue where the drivers just they don't know where the endpoint is, or I don't know what's happening, but the drivers are frequently getting lost, and some of them are no Longmont like the back of their hand. So very excited for seeing how our launch goes, and I hope it's very successful. And yeah, Christmas for me came early. I love Spring Gulch too, so thank you, Longmont.
Yeah, thanks for all the information tonight and presentation. I know they've gone, but staff and Phil, Jim, Kyle, all good stuff. Jim, I want to particularly thank you for your responsiveness when public has come here, and we've had some email conversations with some other things. You're always on top of it. You're always willing to have the conversation and make sure that we try to do something. So I definitely appreciate that. The only two comments with respect to kind of all the things we've been talking about is I have to disagree with the board member and mention the speed cameras. Speeding continues to be a problem. We know that, and unless we kind of have a little bit more of a hammer or unfortunately a stick versus a carrot to get people to slow down, I think speed cameras are going to have to be another tool in the toolbox. as well as I think it happens in January, and I don't know if that's something that we've talked about, and I know public safety, I'm sure, is with the new cell phone law and the hands-free driving and distracted driving. And I know it's a secondary offense, so I think they can only pull you over if you've maybe broken another law. I don't know if we have any input. We don't have input into that, but I'm sure public safety is going to be on top of that, I would think.
Yeah, the law does state that they can pull you over for just having the cell phone.
Oh, it can be.
out.
I thought
Yeah.
it was a secondary. Okay,
Yeah.
great.
So in regards to red light cameras, speed cameras, public safety is taking the lead on those. I know they're looking at they've been tracking data for a number of months through the course of 2024, and they have some recommended locations where they're going to institute those. So they're looking at red light cameras. They're looking at 2 levels of speed cameras. They're looking at a fixed camera, wherein they'll have some locations where they will put up cameras and they'll be running 24/7. And then they're also looking at a series of speed trailers as well that are mobile, that they can move them around.
Yeah.
They're also looking at a couple of, in looking at what company would provide the best hardware for that. They're also looking at, they've been offered up a couple of speed guns as well. So they're looking at a number of different levels for speed and red light cameras. So currently we're trying to wrap it up so that they can still do some purchases with this year's budgets as they move into next year. So that may be one thing we want to add into the work plan for next year is updates periodically for what we're looking at for those.
Oh, fantastic. And I remember having a conversation with, I can't remember his last name, Sergeant, who came traffic division to Division 0, and he said he'd be willing to come to a TAB meeting once a year even. But of course, if you're getting the same information from them, I guess it really doesn't really matter either way. Great. Thank you for all that, and I'll move it over to Councilmember Yarbrough for your final comments.
Thank you. Great information tonight. Thank you, staff, for all that you do, and it's greatly appreciated. Ride Longmont was amazing. Yeah, very exciting this morning to experience that and to know that we have all local drivers who are from the city of Longmont that will be driving people. So they know the city, so that's really, really good. And yeah, I think that it's important for us to share Ride Longmont on our social media. Make sure that if any of you are on Nextdoor, share that. $2, like I say, you can't even get a cup of coffee for $2. Can't get a gallon of gas for $2. So, hopefully the more people that ride and more people that may wish to be past 8 o'clock, then maybe we can modify the time in the future, and maybe they will extend it, because definitely, hopefully by the summer, we will extend the time later for those who go to like the breweries and want to hang out on Main Street and, don't want to drive. And in winter months, it's going to be snow. Who wants to drive across town in the snow and ice and everything? So, those are incentives, I think. So just think about that and just share on your social media. Real quick, the City Council was at Tampa at National League of Cities, and I participated in their mobile session for Vision Zero. And we're so much better than them. So I was like, y'all whack. Really? This is all you doing for this big city? Anyway. So you all, I just want to say that your ideas, your suggestions are so much above and beyond major cities that I don't even know if they know how to, I don't even know if they would know what to do, and they're just very limited in their thinking, where you all are much beyond, way more beyond than major cities like Tampa. Yeah, granted, they have the Riverwalk, but we got Ride Longmont. So, So I just want to say that there's a lot going on across the nation, and I just want to say you all rock, honestly. So we go out there, city council go to all these cities, and of course the staff, you all rock, you know that. I just want to say that just keep coming up with your ideas and your experiences and provide that for staff and also for city council. It does make a difference. And maybe we won't agree with everything, but it's important for us to hear and to see what you're talking about. And so that's very important. So just keep up the good work. Thank you.
Okay. I guess we need to close the meeting. Or Phil, did you want to say something?
We just have the items for upcoming agendas, and that's just the work plan for next time, and then I think that's going to be it. And then we've got 2 items for February, the transportation mobility plan, and then the current 2025 CIP projects report.
See, we can't get our ride Longmont ride. It's after 8 o'clock. That kind of stinks.
I'll need to ride home.
All right, if we can get a motion to adjourn, that would be fantastic.
Motion to adjourn the December 2024 Transportation Advisory Board meeting.
I'll second that motion.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None? Great, thank you.